In this lecture, we'll have a look at outbound delivery and the creation of the document. All throughout this video or this lecture, we'll have a look at the processes surrounding the creation of a delivery, the technical details of a delivery and the structure, how it's stored in SAP, a demonstration, and the configuration behind the outbound deliveries itself. So, an outbound delivery represents a request to ship a group of products or material from the warehouse or the plant to another location, and usually specifically to a customer. It also represents the handover of the document or the process from the order management to the logistics. So once you create a delivery, the responsibility of managing the process now belongs to the logistics team. There are 4 types of deliveries actually. And the first and the most common is the outbound delivery, and it's associated with the sales aspects of the business and primarily focuses on shipping the products, i.e. the materials, to the customer. We have an inbound delivery, which refers to the management of incoming materials from suppliers, and it's actually created with reference to a purchase order. We have the intercompany transfer. It's technically still an outbound delivery, but it transfers materials from one plant to another that's in the same company. Note here I say company rather than company code or legal entity. You might have a situation where you're transferring from the company in Germany, let's say Coca-Cola Germany to Coca-Cola France. They're legally separate entities, but they belong to the same parent. And in that way, this really the same company. Or you could have internally one country, one company like Coca-Cola Germany in the north ships to Coca-Cola Germany in the south, for example. And lastly, you have outbound deliveries from a process called subcontracting, which is where we ship products from a warehouse to a vendor so that they can work on the product, they can do extra manufacturing processes and so forth, and then they send the product back to us. In this process flow diagram, you can see the process of creating the delivery, running through a number of logistics processes, and posting the goods issue, which means that the delivery is complete. So let's have a look at the life cycle of a delivery, and let's have a look at where we want to concentrate on in this video. So the delivery due list here is where we actually create the delivery in SAP, and it represents the start of the handoff process of, as you can see, the sales order here, and the stock transport order, and the subcontracting handoff. So what we do is by creating delivery, as we said before, we're handing off the process to the logistics teams, and this starts off at the delivery due list, which is listing all of the sales orders, stock transport orders that are actually due to be created into deliveries. Now, the thing that you should take into consideration, or the most important thing that you should take into consideration, is when you create the delivery. So we want to create the delivery as late as possible in the daily life cycle. So the reason why you want to do that is you want to offer some flexibility in terms of ATP. So you want to ensure that you allocate the ATP correctly to all the orders. Because once you create the delivery, it's a hard allocation and you can't change the allocation anymore. That's why you want to create the delivery as late as possible to allow this changing of ATPs. For example, an order might come with a higher priority than before. You might want to have a bit of changing of the allocation. The second thing that you should think about is flexibility in terms of changes. Yeah, you have to be flexible because once you create the delivery, you can't do any more changes in the sales order. Yeah, so here, as you can see, once I've created the delivery, that sales order cannot be changed anymore because all of the information is already in the delivery. We'll also see in the next lectures how the subcontracting is actually not created via the standard SAP due list, it's via actually a different transaction. Now, in this video, we will not be seeing how we create a delivery via subcontracting in detail. There is a separate video for the subcontracting process itself. But just for now, we're going to look at the sales order and the stock transport orders and how we create deliveries via the delivery due list. As I mentioned before, the subcontracting obviously is a different transaction, and we look transaction here, and we look at how we do that in a separate lecture. But in the end, all of them will create a delivery, either through the delivery due list that will then run an ATP check, and then the delivery will be created. Once the delivery is created, we also have the activities here of picking, of confirming the picking, maybe a bit of packing, printing of the packing list, for example. We post the goods issue. We'll have a look at that in detail. We'll also then reduce some inventory stock because we post the goods issue, and we do the shipping, the printing of shipping documents. In this particular lecture, we will concentrate on the first activity, which is the creation of the delivery from the delivery due list. Before we go on, let's have a look at the structure of the delivery. And as we mentioned before, the standard outbound delivery is created with reference to a sales order. So what does this actually mean? As you can see on the right hand side, you have the delivery here, and on the left hand side you have the sales order. You have the header of the sales order, and information on the header level of the sales order is copied into the header level of the delivery. We do this by a logic called the copy control, and you can see more details of this in the next lecture. But for now, just assume that there's some logic that just copies data from the header to the header level, from the sales order header to the delivery header. And this is the same for the item. You have an item to item copy, and also from the schedule line. So data from the schedule line we copy into the item of the delivery. Note that there is no schedule line on the delivery at all. Okay, but also we have items that are values that are copied to the header of the delivery. So for example, and also schedule line values that are copied onto the header. So what are they? Why is items copied over? So for example, the shipping point is copied from the item level into the header level of the delivery, and it's a way of grouping particular items together in one delivery header. The schedule line, we have the deadline, so all of the delivery dates, the goods issue date, the recommended delivery dates, they're all actually copied onto the header level. So what happens if we have, for example, two items with different values? Then we have something called a delivery split, which basically means that from one sales order you will actually create two or more deliveries. The most common delivery split is when you have a sales order and you have items with different shipping points. That will cause a delivery split. Or if you have a schedule line that has more than one delivery deadlines, that will cause again a delivery split, because that delivery deadlines at the goods issue date or the delivery arrival time is copied onto the header level. Having different ones on different items again will cause a split. So it's important to understand a delivery will only have a header and item, and various information from the sales orders is copied onto the delivery. There are some values that are redetermined. We saw before the route in theory could be redetermined. Yeah. And it's not always a corresponding. It's not like item to item, schedule line to item. It goes all over the place a slightly little bit. We will have a look a little bit more of this logic in the copy control, but for now, just understand that data is copied from the sales order into the delivery when we create the delivery. There are 3 transactions in SAP that you can use to create an outbound delivery. When you use them depends on the scenario that you are facing, and this will drive the transaction, and it's up to you to decide which transaction is best for you. The first is the VL01N, which is used to create a single delivery with reference to a sales order. Pretty simple. The next is the VL10. Now the X is used to represent a letter from A to I. We'll have a look at that. And we use it to create deliveries en masse. So you can create more than one deliveries, multiple deliveries very quickly. It's also the only way to create a delivery from a stock transport order. And finally, we have the transaction ME2O, which is used to create outbound deliveries from the subcontracting process. This is the only transaction you can use to create deliveries from the subcontracting process. We won't cover this in this video, we'll cover this in a later video so that you can see the end-to-end process. As I said before, the VL10X is actually a VL10 A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. You can swap them. And each one represents the creation either of a sales order based on purchase orders and so forth. So for example, in G you can create deliveries based on sales orders or stock transport orders, which is the purchase order, and you would as a user decide which one you want to use. So let's say you only want to create deliveries based on sales orders, you use VL10A. If you only want to create deliveries based on stock transport orders, you use transaction VL10B. If you want to mix the two, then you use the other transactions here. And the way to use it is that when you run your scenario, you then decide, do you want to create sales orders and stock transport orders together, or do you want to just create sales orders and so forth? Yeah. So how or what type of deliveries or what type of outbound deliveries you want to create drives which transaction you want to use. So in closing, we've seen what an outbound delivery is, which is basically the start of the logistics process in order to ship a product to the customer. We've seen what type of delivery there is and the structure and when to create it. So now let's go on to the next video in which we will see how to create the delivery in SAP and the configuration behind it.